All right, everybody. Shang-Chi, the movie to see, in my opinion, the movie to see that everyone needs to see. But I got a special guest in the house, Andy Park, director of visual development at Marvel Studios. Andy, welcome. Thanks so much for hanging out, buddy. I mean, we've done this rodeo. This is not our first rodeo.
This is a third time, maybe?
I don't know. Third? It might be, but so gracious with your time. Andy, I know there's people that may not really have an idea of what you do, but I like to hype you up because it's kind of important in the whole Marvel Studios ethos. So can you kind of tell people at home what your role is with Marvel Studios?
Sure. Thanks for having me again, Brian.
Of course, bro.
My name is Andy Park. I am the director of visual development at Marvel Studios. And our department is an in-house department that has been there ever since the beginning, essentially. Started 2010 by Charlie Wen and Ryan Meinerding, who were integral in those very early films, namely Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor. And then from that point on, they formed a team of artists, knowing that there's going to be all these movies coming up that are all connected. So the visual development department, our main job is to design the characters, the heroes, the villains, if they're CG characters. We're designing that, and we're also coming up with the general look and feel of all of our projects. So mainly through keyframe illustrations, which are single illustrations for any given project, film, or now Disney Plus. So we're there in the very beginning, coming up with ideas, looks of the film, as well as like the characters. So that's in a nutshell what we do.
And also because I'm going to hype you up, like if you watch the credits, okay, when the credits scroll, you'll see all the actors, and literally right after the actors, your name is like literally top 10 right after the actors. And I love seeing that. I get so excited. I'm just like, Andy. And so, I just want to bring that up because that should tell people, kind of how important the role that you and your team play in what we get to see. Because without your concepts and references, I mean, some of the stuff that you guys have put together, and we're going to show some great, pieces of work that led directly to scenes in the movie. I mean, without that, the movie doesn't necessarily, in my opinion, look how it looks.
Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's definitely an honor to be able to work on these films and get that like kind of top billing. We've all worked so hard. It's an honor.
Okay, so I've kissed your butt enough. People that know you
more.
please, Brian, more. So let's jump into some of the visual development art that you guys have here. And I'm curious, there might be things that if I ask a question that you can't answer, just blink twice. I get it. I know how it is. If someone's off camera right now and they're pointing some sort of thing at you, then and you look to the side, I understand as well. Okay.
Yep. You see all the actors, they're always afraid when they're doing the interviews for Marvel Studios.
Well, the good thing is Shang-Chi. Yeah, the good thing is Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings is out already. So at least allows you a little more liberty, I guess, to talk about something. So, I'd love to hear. I'm going to look at this first shot as kind of like a finished standing pose of Shang-Chi, Simu Liu, just kind of standing, kind of like a little power pose. And I'm curious, this is a movie that obviously you're taking some references from the comic books, but quite honestly, you have to create this look. So is there any direction that Marvel Studios gives you first, or do you give them the first looks? Like how does that start, even from a character like this that has some references, but not as many other characters from the comics?
Yeah, I think every project that we do is different because it depends on how early we start. And usually we start a lot of times even before there's a director or there's any casting or even like a finalized script. I mean, we're definitely working in conjunction when they're starting the script. So a lot of times we're just referencing the comic book, right? And I think definitely with Shang-Chi, as you probably know, like we had a little bit more leeway as far as like not being like beholden to like the past for obvious reasons. So we definitely, when it came to Shang-Chi's look, I didn't know the story yet, right? Because it wasn't established yet. We knew he's going to be donning some kind of superhero outfit, but we didn't know about Tao Lo yet, or that it's from his mom. So I was kind of just blue skying, exploring, like obviously starting off with the comic, loosely, but a lot of times when I look at the past in the comic, a lot of times it's just kind of like this shirtless guy or just a kung fu gi, or the more contemporary version was that kind of jumpsuit, red, orange, and then that kind of black motif in the
strong,
chest.
like Bruce Lee cues, right? Really strong Bruce Lee or kung
definitely
fu cues, right?
Game of Thrones action. So definitely taking nod from that. And then I knew general things that they kind of wanted, that he's going to be, in America, spending time here. So there's going to be an East-West thing going on. So I definitely did a deep dive into research when it comes to Chinese history, the fashion, that kind of stuff. Definitely the Hanfu was a big influence, the traditional Chinese clothing, which myself being Korean American, the Hanfu was something that influenced, like in Japanese culture, the kimono, and then for Korean culture, the hanbok, right? Which I grew up wearing the hanbok every New Year's. So you kind of have the leftover right thing going on the collar. So there's a lot of that kind of influence, and then also it's a question of how Western do you go. So I did a lot of kind of more Western influence versus Eastern influence. So I did a whole range some that felt very, very Eastern traditional, and then some that had a lot more contemporary, even urban looks. I was, with hoodies and just different, like very cool stuff that like you or I would want to wear. So, and then then Destin came in, and Dave Callahan, the writer as well. And then through meetings and conversations, I started getting the story. And so that's when it started like kind of getting honed down to like towards the look that you saw in the film, where it's from a kind of a mysterious, mythical place in Taolo. So definitely having a lot more of the traditional, but then meeting a little bit, and then the story that comes from there. But I don't know. Did you want me to talk about the specifics of the costume?
Yeah,
or is that...
no. That's great background. No, I love the specifics, because I remember when we talked about Captain Marvel, you kind of had some design cues in the design that were something that people wouldn't know or notice or know that was, a lot of stuff that you design may kind of come across without someone actually outright noticing it, but it actually is part of the story. So with Shang-Chi's, I guess, I don't know what to call it, like his suit or his top, what are kind of some of those design cues or little things that you put in there?
Well, definitely, as I mentioned, the little more of that traditional Hanfu kind of leftover right with the collar and everything.
Yeah,
and then definitely knowing once I got to know the story about the Great Protector, the dragon from Taolo. So then starting to incorporate dragon scales, dragon skin, playing with that idea. And then when it came to the triangle motif that you see in the comic, I wanted to play with that design. And I wanted to give it more meaning than just a design, just something that's aesthetic. So in my research, I discovered the endless knot, or the infinite knot. And it's a symbol that's been used throughout different cultures for thousands of years, but definitely in Chinese culture, it's been used a lot, like to this day in architecture and fashion, in art, and it has a lot of symbolism, a lot of meaning, right? That was perfect, that I thought was perfect for this, because it symbolizes like the endless cycle of like birth, death, rebirth. It's for protection. And then a really cool thing is that when it's given as a gift, it creates a connection between the giver and the receiver, right? And definitely with his mom, that definitely played into that. And then, so I wanted to create this costume, or it's not just a costume. I'm thinking about the whole overall look, right? I'm not just thinking costume. So when it comes to character, like it's all about the story. For Shang-Chi's story, he's a product of his mom, his dad, right? But he's also a product of his time in America, right? So as you got the Asian American experience, and definitely myself, and probably you as well. Like I'm Korean American, born and raised in the States, but I definitely, have roots also in Korea and in Asia. So I wanted to give him one thing that was like distinctly his own, because the rest of it was given to him. He got his mom in the jacket that also serves as some kind of like armor without being like rigid armor because of the mystical qualities of Taolo. And then you got the pants, which was, I was thinking just more traditional kung fu style, martial arts style kind of pants. And then he's also a product of his dad. So that's why at the end of the movie, he gets the rings, right? And then the one aspect that I wanted him to have that was distinctly his own was his shoes. So I was really pushing, and there was like a lot of debate back and forth. But I was like, I think it'd be really cool if that's the one thing he just keeps, So I definitely gave him some kind of like sneakers, that kind of look, and it ended up being like the Air Jordans. So
okay, that's so great. That's a great nugget because I'm a sneakerhead, and everyone's like, he's wearing Jordans because he has that one scene where he takes his shoes off before he goes into Katie's home or her family's residence. Takes his shoes off and it's like, oh, there's Jordans. And so, okay, this is a fun little nugget. So did you outright say because there is a sneaker culture that you wanted them to be Air Jordans specifically just because of the relevance, or, how specific were you from a standpoint of his shoes?
I'm not a sneakerhead. I do like shoes, but I'm not a sneakerhead like you because it's very expensive hobby to get into. But so I didn't say specifically Air Jordans, but I definitely was pushing for his own sneakers. So the ones that you see in the painting that I did, the concept illustration, it was some kind of sneakers. I wasn't being specific, although looking back, I should have done all different types. But it's very much based on the type of shoes that I would wear, right? So I don't know where in the process it ended up becoming sneakers, or if that was a Simu Liu thing. But it's the same kind of look where the bottom is the white, has a little bit of red trim, and then overall it's a black shoe. So there was a lot of debate, like whether or not they were going to go in that direction, or if they were going to just give him something from Taolo. But for me, I was really pushing like, I think having one thing that's his own, that's part of his story, right? So you have his whole story just in his look, whether or not people really register that or not. It's just like anything we wear, our fashion tells a story. It might be some more like outright than others and some more subtle, but I think that's the whole job of, creating characters and costume design.
But even just for you to think that way is pretty cool, Andy, because it's like, we see the modern look of people wearing like suits with sneakers now, right? That's a thing. And so he basically has this like almost formal but stylish martial arts suit, but he's wearing sneakers, and it does make it a little more relatable instead of having him like some flaming dragon shoes.
It could have done that, like the scales and everything, but
that's why you're the artist.
I love the sneakers.
I believe he was wearing like I think they also, in an interesting way for sneakerheads, I think he was wearing like these Team Jordan shoes. And why I say Team Jordan is because, the Jordan line has these like very distinct, iconic shoes. And I think it would have actually detracted away from him if someone's like, they didn't want people to say, oh, he's wearing Jordan 11s. He's wearing Jordan 4s. So I think I have to look it up. I know they're not one of the quote unquote classic iconic sneakerhead Jordans, but everyone knew they were Jordans because of that. So that
they might have added like it's custom, right? Because I don't know, was there one
details?
Well, I know it has some kind of red trim, right? But I don't know if there was Jordans that had that exact red trim, because that was in the concept as well, and it just kind of works with the whole look. So I wonder if I don't even know that answer, whether or not they. I should look it up a little bit. Yeah.
I should look it up, but that's a fun story. Okay, so. That's a really cool detail. I love that nugget. Thank you for sharing that. Have you talked about that much?
I did in my post on Instagram. I think I did. Wait, did I? I don't even know.
Dude, you posted so much. You're like,
I know. I'm not sure if I actually talked about the shoe. I just posted on if you heard of the Facebook group Subtle Asian Traits. But that's one where Simu Liu has been part of that, and one of his interviews, he was kind of like giving them a shout out. So I just I did my first post there today on Facebook, and I talked about that. The mom,
very cool,
the dad, and then the shoes.
Very cool. All right, so the other thing that I loved, I remember you posted about this. We're gonna look at this other image that is him finally like collecting the 10 rings for the first time. They're in a circle around him. What I love about this concept piece that you did is that this appears in the movie. You don't get to see like everything as it happens, but this image that you put up as the concept during the climactic moment of the film ends up legitimately being like an actual, posed moment in the movie. So I know you've done this a lot, but how did that make you feel? Because I remember you posting about this and being actually pretty excited about it.
Yeah. I mean, it's always fun after doing, spending months and months doing character designs, because it's not easy. And just for that one character concept art that you saw that I did of Simu Liu as Shang-Chi, I did months and months, and I have like, I don't know, probably about 100 different versions that eventually, be able to show. There will be an art book eventually. And then after doing all that, we start doing keyframes, the illustrations, right? So that's just based off of conversations with Destin, based off of the script. And they wanted to see that kind of that seminal moment at the end, at the climax, where he's facing off with his dad. The rings are circling around him. And then, the battle between the, what do they call it? The
Soul Eater?
The Dweller in Darkness is what they call him.
See, I never knew what the name was. I just knew like, oh, big dragony Soul Eater guy.
Tentacle dude or girl, I don't know.
Yeah, true.
Genderless probably. And then the Great Protector like in the background. And then hint that down below there's a battle going on in the village. So I'm trying to encapsulate that whole climax in one image. We don't do those images thinking this is going to be an exact shot, but it's basically to, encompass a whole scene. And so that when Destin sees it, when Kevin Feige sees it, when all the heads of the other departments from VFX to costumes to production design sees it, it hopefully will inspire everyone and get everyone on the same page, being like, oh yes, this might not be exactly 100%, but at least we're on the same page rather than just a script where everyone might have different image in their head. So yeah, that was a really fun one. A lot of elements to that one, and just doing that keyframe was fun. Just seeing the culmination of his whole story, where the rings are circling him. He has his suit on. You don't see Wenwu, his dad, there, but you know that that's the face-off moment. So yeah, that was a really, really fun keyframe.
Super, super cool. Within that keyframe, you talked about all these different iterations. We'll see it when the art book comes out. I know you guys always release an art book for each of the movies that you've worked on. With all these multiple versions of Shang-Chi, did the actual one that they land on, I know you kind of sometimes as you're conceptualizing this, you kind of have some gut instincts of like, oh, these might be like top 5-ish, right? Or these are kind of more maybe my favorites, but I don't know if they're going to go that way because the story kind of dictates some of this stuff. Did the final design, was it one of in your mind, top version? I don't want to say, they're all like children, but was it one of your kind of higher tier versions of the concepts?
Yeah, that's a good question, because we do so many. So you might like gravitate towards, I like this look, but I think yes, this was the one in the group of the ones that I wanted it to go towards, because it was the more superhero-y it can be. That's more fun. And especially myself grew up in the 80s and 90s. I grew up reading Marvel comics. So I want it to be like a superhero rather than just, a dude in some cool looking urban jacket, which, I did a lot of those kind of versions, which could be cool too, but I want it to be a little bit more comic booky. And so this one lended more towards that, with the super suit. Well, it's not a super suit, but it is more of a jacket. So, and then you got the more traditional pants. So it kind of blends between both. But yeah, I would say this definitely went towards that direction. And then, people talk about like, I think I saw some chatter on social media before the movie came out, like him having the rolled up sleeves, and they're like, he's going to get the rings. and it's like, oh, it's so convenient. And I was like, yeah, well,
are there, now that the movie's out, are there any kind of fun, stupid theories that people had thrown out just based on what they had seen? Because there's so much interest and speculation around every single Marvel film. Were there any kind of theories that you thought that come off the top of your head that were like totally stupid but funny to you?
I don't know about stupid, but it is always fun to see people's like, they see the trailer, they get some impression. There's a lot of chatter and reactions. I think it was really cool because a lot of people didn't know what to expect. And I think a lot of people thought it was some kind of like tournament movie because of the whole, that one scene that you see with Abomination and Wong. So they were pleasantly surprised when they watched the movie and how much it's about family, and then just seeing the powerful like portrayal of Wenwu from Tony Leung, and then just
Oh,
between Jialing and Shang-Chi and Katie. It's all about the relationships and family. So I think I think people liked it overall.
well, I can tell, as a friend, you've never spoiled anything. In fact, I remember when I saw the trailer, I was one of those people. I was like, yo, is that Fin Fang Foom? And Underwater the Dragon.
Yeah.
And all I got was 3 dots and I just left it alone. And it was not. It didn't confirm it or deny it. You're just like, you're probably like, oh, Brian, think what you want. Think what you want.
Yep.
Okay, go back to your little business. I know what's
Oh,
going on.
all my friends, including my family and children, they try to find out spoilers, and I'm so good. I don't share it. Not only contractually, I'm not allowed to, but more than that, it's actually because I want you and my my wife and my kids and my friends to experience it in a way that I never will.
Wow. I think we all heard the deep pain and sorrow.
No.
What about, hey, what
I'm
about
not
the other
complaining.
movie? I know you're not, but what about the other movies that, you're the lead for this one, but I know you and Ryan kind of lead different movies. For the ones that he's heading, you don't see as much, or do you?
Yeah. So that is one thing. Like, so he will lead. I'm leading some films. He's leading the other ones, right? So while I was leading Captain Marvel and Thor Ragnarok and Ant-Man and Wasp, those things, he was leading, like Doctor Strange, Black Panther, and the last 2 Avengers films and Spider-Man. So definitely, because I'm a fan at heart, I have access to like finding out all the details on the ones he's working on, but I intentionally try not to. And sometimes he'll be talking to a coworker and I'll be like, oh, don't tell me what happens there, right? But inevitably, like I know so much, right? There's no way to like not know. But there were a couple things from like, the movies that he's led where I was like genuinely like, what? I didn't know that was gonna happen. How did I not get spoiled? But yeah, I try.
All right. So let's, we have some other pieces of work here from your team that you obviously have kind of final say to push through. Let's actually talk about Wenwu, Tony Leung. Unbelievable job in this movie. Like, I've seen the movie 3 times now, and every time I'm just like, that dude is insane. Like his role, every time he speaks, it feels the same. It has the same impact, right? How sometimes you watch a movie and you're like, okay, I've seen this, whatever, 2-3 times. His stuff's like, he's an amazing actor. So, we have some of these concepts here, and different designs, one showing him kind of like with the different hairstyle. Maybe I was hoping you could maybe talk about designing him. And I was curious, these concepts show his different hairstyles. Was that an idea from your team before the movie was shot? Because right when he conquers that first scene, that civilization, he has his kind of the longer hair and the facial hair, and then he obviously cleans up. Are those ideas that you kind of instilled into the movie with your team?
Because we're working so early on, so none of it was set. So there was no direction from the director or from the story or the script where like, here he has short hair, here he has long hair, so we have no idea if he's going to have the beard and long hair even at the end of the movie. But so we're kind of just exploring all of that, right? And definitely one of the joys I have in leading the visual development team are my artists, right? All the amazing artists that I get to work with. So for Wenwu is specifically like Anthony Francisco, Jackson Z, Alexi Bricklot. They were doing the bulk of designing on him, and eventually Jackson Z was the one who got the final look approved, and he did an amazing job. But yeah, we were all doing designs even before Tony Leung was cast. So it's one of those similar to like when I was designing Hela. Like there was no Cate Blanchett, and then as you're starting to get an approval, they tell you, hey, we got Tony Leung or Cate Blanchett, and then you're just like, oh my gosh, and then you start painting in the head to make it work with his proportions and all that kind of stuff. But Tony Leung is amazing. He is. There's a video on YouTube I watched recently about like Tony Leung's like his whole career and how he acts with his eyes. I should find it, send it to you. It's really good because he doesn't have to say anything. His eyes, he's so good at just like conveying so much. Yeah.
Is in his does costume design or character design? I know even though Jackson might have been kind of the final say, are there any things that or nuggets in there that you know or you want that you could bring up about his design specifically, or maybe some of the intention behind it?
I know Jackson was doing a lot of research into just ancient Chinese armor, right? So that was kind of the main thing. Like when it came to his final look for his battle at Tao Lo, it was mixing ancient Chinese armor, but nothing specific, just kind of a general look and feel mixed with modern day tactical, like soldier kind of like army look or whatever, the tactical looks. So it's kind of melding those two worlds together. And then he was also responsible for designing the rings, right? So that was another one where there was like a big exploration with all the artists like doing different versions, because they didn't know exactly that. Well, I guess I'm just kind of sidestepping to the rings.
No. Let's talk about the rings because because look, I think that a lot of people, so for example, comic book heads are like, even though he's not the Mandarin in this movie, right? They're like, the Mandarin had rings on his fingers. And I say, hey, these movies aren't actually, they're based on the comics, but they're actually made for the general audience. And also, if we just had Thanos with gems in his hand, we don't want to see a guy with rings on his hand. So when you guys were concepting Wenwu, were you even given a direction like we're not going to do the rings and come up with a different philosophy for that?
Yeah, that was pretty much early on. That was relayed through Jonathan Schwartz, the producer, something that Destin had. I guess they were watching, doing research, looking at different martial arts films through the decades. And I can't remember the one that they were watching, but it's also related to Kung Fu Hustle, but it was a different one. But the whole Hungar training, martial arts training rings, Destin was like, what if the rings were that on his on his arms like that? Even though, so they're a real thing, because I hear a lot of chatter online where they're like, they're not rings, those are bracelets. No, they are rings because it's based off of the training rings that they call it in traditional martial arts, right? So, and then I had the idea once we started exploring that, like when he powers on, the rings can slide, onto the arm, and then you get, the veins going on. So yeah, and definitely it's also to make a distinction from, we just had the Infinity Saga, so it was too similar. So we did and then on top of just the look of it, so much of our exploration was, what do they actually do, right? So because again, there's too many similarities between, what we just saw with each ring doing different things. So that was a deep dive into us doing just exploration on what do these rings do, so we did explore like all these different things that you'll eventually see in the art book as well. But yeah, and then a lot of different artists were doing different visuals on what do they actually look like, and eventually Jackson Z was the one who came up with that visual, and that's what you saw. It looks really cool. It's like shing.
Well, I love how he like propels himself from the ground, right? You guys use them in a lot of different ways. In the beginning, they were like defensive, almost like whips, creating like this shield. But I love every time he like jumped up, went and boom, and like propelled himself. Like that was pretty sick.
We did a lot of that stuff. We showed like a lot of the rings and what they can do. So we even did sequences. So they're kind of like, we also do like a lot of gags, like it's almost like a simple animation of what the rings could do. So there was a lot of exploration on, this is what it can do offensively, and then this is what it can do defensively. So even things like all the artists did it, but Alexei Bricklot was one guy who did a lot of amazing kind of simple animations where he can use it to step on, right? So there was that scene at the end when you see Shang-Chi do that, and then he lands a kick. Was it him who did that? Yeah, I think it was him who did that to his father. So yeah.
So are you saying though, were there other concepts? I know we went with the kind of the rings on the wrist, but were there any other ones that you could say that you guys didn't end up using?
As far as their power sets?
As far as just even the idea of like, I guess I'm asking, when you guys were tasked to conceptualize the rings, where at least you were instructed, okay, we're going to make these rings around the wrist, or did you even have other ideas that had nothing to do with rings around like our forearm and stuff like that?
No, I think because from the get-go they were like, let's explore the rings
Mm-hmm.
on the as bracelets essentially. And then that's sort of the idea where they kind of separate. And then I even did some where it's like it separates and goes all the way up the arm. You know, there's a lot of different kind of exploration of, you know, how does it, if there's clothes there, like does it go over it? Like, you know, all that kind of stuff. So we did a deep dive into their visual as well as what, you know, their abilities.
Do you ever like buy physical rings or bangles and put them on your arm to play around with to see what it feels or looks like?
I no, it didn't. I know that's strange because I think because the way I always saw it was because if you think about it, you know, the rings, they're as they go up the arm, they kind of change. They have to, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you know, that's why they're mysterious and mystical. Like we don't even know exactly what those things are, but they
I think
do have
you
to.
know more than I do. I think you know more than I do.
You know, but they do have to change size as they're like obviously going up the arm, going down, because they're more fitted, right? They're not the traditional Hungar rings where they're like really big and they're just like dangling around, like you know. So they are mysterious, as Wong, you know, made it clear, like and Captain Marvel and Bruce Banner, right?
Yeah. And Andy Park knows a little more than how mysterious they are. I can see it in his eyes. But that's where we stop the question because we're not going to find out. Okay. You know, there's a bunch of other characters here, but the one that I've got to bring up is Abomination, right? Super exciting to see him in the trailer. And like you said, kind of a misdirection. Some people are like, oh, I thought Abomination was going to be in it so much more. I'm like, I didn't think so, but you know, I stayed away from the spoilers because I just didn't want to know much about this movie, quite honestly. But you know, we see an Abomination that is more like what we've seen in the comics. He's evolved. So what kind of information was given to your team in designing Abomination, a character we haven't seen since the Incredible Hulk with the Edward Norton movie? What is it? I don't know, 7, 8, 9 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's part of the fun working here. Cause like, you know, I've been here for 11 and a half years, you know, ever since the first Captain America. And then, so we know all these stories and all these characters. And then, you know, like, yeah, that many movies, this many years later, they come to me and say, hey, Abomination is going to be in this movie. And I'm like, what? But I'm like, that's awesome. But okay. And they're like, yeah, and we want to, so Abomination is very simple. They came to us, they told me Abomination is going to be in it. I don't even know if they told me that he's going to be fighting Wong, but he's just going to be in that club that Jinling created and runs. And the only direction they gave us was let's make it a little bit more like the comic. So I gave that assignment to Anthony, and he did a couple of versions, and bam, fairly simple, very straightforward. But then, you know, I remember watching the trailers and then people going nuts over that, and I'm like, oh no, are they going to get really disappointed because he's in it very short, very short. But yeah, but it worked, you know.
Did they tell you anything else, or literally the direction was, hey, make it look more like the comic version?
Yeah, they basically said it's like, you know, look at what Abomination looked like in Incredible Hulk. But, you know, I think we have a little bit of freedom. There's been time has passed, and let's make them a little bit more like the comic. So we did versions where it's like more that kind of brownish without the ear stuff. And then we did some that's, you know, the green. Yeah. But I think, you know, it's enough, even with all the gills and green colors, that people are like, oh, sure. I'm sure there's some reason, which, you know, you and I don't know yet. Or maybe I do, but
yeah, I was gonna say. My question was more, they probably proposed it to you, and they don't necessarily tell you all the story reasons behind it first, right? So you designed it, but now you know some of the story reasons behind it.
Do I? Do they?
I'm not trying to get you fired. You're my homie. I'm just like, okay.
I know. That's good. Maybe one day we'll find out.
in an upcoming series, we do know that he is scheduled. This is, you know, known thing that he's scheduled to appear in the She-Hulk series.
Oh, really?
Get out of here. That's totally okay. I'm not here to get you in trouble. Okay, let's. You know what? We'll kind of cover some of these other designs. Thank you for entertaining me so much. Razor Fist. If I recall, in the comics, I feel like both of his arms were blades, but you guys kind of did a modification here for this. So I guess, and he's like, you know, kind of. It's kind of cool. He's like the buff Euro like muscle. Any kind of interesting things about him and his design?
I think that's another fairly straightforward one because, you know, knowing that it's going to be 10 rings, he's going to be the muscle for Wenwu and the 10 rings. And then, I think they just wanted, I don't think we did some with 2. I think they always said 1 arm. But then just John Staub was the artist that came up with that look. And then, you know, there's a lot of exploration on what does his blade actually look like. But yeah, fairly straightforward. And then they, you know, I know while he was doing that, there was no actor for a while, and then eventually got that actor.
How about a character that I think was probably one of the surprise characters of the movie, Jinling, the sister of Simu Liu. Amazing. Like, I mean, I think everyone left that saying like, I want to see more of her. I want to know more about her. Just really incredible performance, and the skill was awesome. So, you know, her character design, once they're given the new I guess outfits, I don't want to call them costumes, right, because they're not, they're actual outfits. You know, some connective tissue between her and Shang-Chi.
Yeah, definitely. So that one came later, where I gave that assignment to Yana Shermer, and after, you know, I spent, you know, months trying to get the Shang-Chi look, and then from that point, and then as I'm doing that, a lot of the other artists were working on the Great Protector. So there was so much exploration on the dragon. And then eventually once because as we're working on this, they don't have it all figured out like that. The scales are going to be from the dragon. Like what is this costume that Shang-Chi is going to be wearing? And eventually Jinling. So it happens organically, you know, and our concepts will influence the story, and then of course the story will influence, and it goes back and forth as we have like weeks and weeks of spending time together. Eventually, you know, once, you know, it was landed that the dragon's going to have white and red scales, we're like, oh, she can have the white scales, he'll have the red scales, right? So she took a lot of nods from the design language that I created for Shang-Chi, and just put it on Jinling, on Menger Zhang. I think that's how you say name.
Yep. Very good, Andy. Representing for Koreans saying Chinese names. Like, very good.
My wife.
I had to actually look up how to pronounce her name properly too, because it was like, you know, it looks
like Menger, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Menger Zhang. Yeah. But yeah, she's great. She's great in the film, and seeing them next to each other, the white and the red, and how connects to the Great Protector, and how the Great Protector is essentially symbolizes their mother. It's just really kind of cohesive, like visual language that's going on with the whole film.
So then, was the Great Protector's color scheme decided after Shang-Chi and Jinling's colors were decided, to then tie that to the story of it being the scales of the Great Protector? Do you know what I mean? Or I guess Shang-Chi was always going to be red. Shang-Chi was always going to be red, right?
Yes. So I'm trying to remember exactly how when, because of its organic nature, definitely red was known. So I don't remember when it comes to Jinling and the Great Protector, like probably the dragon was first. I think was first, you know, but yeah, because I think the idea of Jinling having a costume at the end, I think that kind of came later as well, the idea of that.
Dude, you know what's really funny? I never tied the two together, like, until you said, oh, the scales of the dragon are red and white. So are Jinling and Shang-Chi.
Oh, like, you know what? I saw that on.
So I was like, duh. I literally just like, I felt so stupid.
No, you're not the only one.
That.
You're not the only one. Someone on social media said something like that. Like, why is hers white? And I was like, I didn't comment. I didn't respond, but I'm like, the answer is you know the answer. The dragon.
As you're saying it, I was like, oh wow, I never realized that.
Yeah, white scales and red scales. Yep.
Wow. Oh, I feel so stupid. That is amazing. Now, I know you guys, and your team are dealing with so many projects. Can you at least, people so they kind of know well where else they're going to see some of your influence? What other projects that have currently been announced are you working on right now?
For the past year, I'll say from last year till now, I'll name those projects that haven't come out yet. I did very early work on the Hawkeye series, but just very, very early. There's been a couple stuff that have been released, some of my early stuff. And then Thor: Love and Thunder, like that one's, that one. I can't wait
doing
for.
that. I forgot that you're doing Thor: Love and Thunder. Damn, dude.
Yeah, that one is. I mean, Taika is always fun to work with. He's a, crazy guy, crazy and awesome guy. And then more recently, been working on the Marvels with Nia DaCosta. Very exciting. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania with Peyton Reed. Oh, so many good things. So many good things. I know. And the most recent one is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 with James.
And you've been with that series from the beginning, if I recall, right?
Yeah. I didn't lead the first one. Charlie led the first one, but I led this. My very first film that I led was Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. So yeah. From day one, that was one example of where, after we worked on Avengers, Kevin Feige just came to us and said, we're going to be doing Guardians of the Galaxy. There's no director. There's no story. You guys spend a couple weeks and just do designs, So yeah, that was a fun one.
So for people that are wondering, no, Andy Park does not sleep.
Yeah, kind of. I try. There's a lot of stuff. And then, they keep on adding stuff. We got Disney Plus now, and
oh my
lots of movies coming
it's amazing. It's amazing. I mean, the quality, the level of quality that we're seeing. I mean, now you arguably say a Disney Plus feature is like a 6-hour Marvel movie, though just how involved it is. So that's pretty exciting. I mean, we really just, appreciate your time, all your amazing work, because we're the ones that get a benefit from all your blood, sweat, and tears.
I'm a fan too. I work on these things, but I love watching them. Especially with my family. Like, we're watching Shang-Chi on Saturday with my friends, rented out a theater.
Oh, awesome.
They're going to be watching it for the first time. So,
you know what? I did want to touch on this real quickly because you and I had talked about this, and we were both lucky enough to be at the premiere. And what I thought was interesting about how you and I felt going into it, we were both kind of nervous from a standpoint of, I hope people like it. I hope it's good, right? Because there's kind of a lot of it weighing on, Asian Americans as a whole. I'm Chinese American, so sure, I might feel like, oh, it's a Chinese character. But even at that, just Asian Americans as a whole, getting a superhero, I thought it was kind of interesting that, someone like you that's worked so intimately still kind of gets those butterflies of just how it's going to be received. Can you kind of talk about, maybe is it because you're so insulated in this world that you just really don't know how people are going to react to this? Even if you think it's good, they may not be good to the others.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great question, because it's funny, even with over a decade of success the MCU has experienced, it's my whole history here, again, 11 years in, like every single movie I've worked on, starting from Captain America to Thor to the Avengers, like I remember each of those, I was nervous because there's this what the MCU, what Marvel Studios, what Kevin Feige has done is pretty much unprecedented. There's never been this connected universe, right? And then they're basing it off of, at that time, more second tier Marvel characters, right? It's the whole history of Marvel Studios. Iron Man is not a, A level, it's not a surefire success. But, so each one, Captain America, people knew who he was, but like even myself, I wasn't a fan of Captain America growing up. He was kind of boring to me, but now he's like too. My favorite character because of the MCU, right? And then of course Avengers was that film where it's like, it's impossible, like you can never do a film with that many main heroes. So, and then of course right after that, he says, we're doing Guardians of the Galaxy. Kevin, so you're just like, okay, that's where the MCU is gonna falter and I'll be out of a job. And then that's a success. And then he says, now we're going to do Ant-Man. I'm just like, okay, that's definitely going to be the one where we're going to, the comic book trend is going to go away. So it's just the whole history. So it's every single film. There's a few where I was just like, okay, I know this is going to be good. Like I think like Civil War and the last two Avengers. I was like, okay, this is definitely probably gonna be good. But
Andy, they're like, we're gonna do Infinity War. I don't know about that.
I know that one's it's gonna be good, but it's more about like you're nervous whether or not they'll stick the landing because so much is riding on that. But also the Russo brothers, you trust them so much. So for Shang-Chi, definitely, I had the same kind of like nervous energy of like, is this good? Because even though you trust the people and the script is good and all this stuff, you just never know. Like when it comes to movies, like how many movies do you watch out there and why aren't they all just amazing? Because there's something about movie magic where even though you have a good script, if you have bad, whatever, there's so many places where a movie can fall off and it just doesn't gel for whatever reason. So there has to be some kind of element of just that's magic. And then for Shang-Chi, we had you alluded to it, the added element of it being the first Asian American title hero for the MCU. So obviously, myself being an Asian American, like you have that added nervousness, right? Because you're like with Black Panther, like that's the first, that when that movie came out, it has a little bit more meaning than just another new character. Right, when Captain Marvel first came out, like it has a little bit more, in line, when it comes to that being the first title female superhero character. So for Shang-Chi, obviously, there's a lot of that. And I think as an Asian American in our culture growing up, there's a lot of like there's like a shame culture that we've experienced, because I grew up in America. My parents immigrated from Korea, and I grew up feeling that shame where I'm kind of like, I want to just be American. I don't, I want to downplay my Asianness. I don't want to be seen as different. So we have that in our culture, right? So and then we grew up with decades of when we see Asians in media, it's it tends a lot of times it could be very stereotyped or things that just make us be like, oh, whether it's like playing the deep accents or just, the tropes. So obviously with Shang-Chi, it's playing that fine line of like, it is martial arts. So that is something that has been used in the past, to be that stereotype as well. So I know a lot of Asians, including my friends, and were a little bit more nervous about this one because, they want to be represented in a right way, right? In a positive way. So yeah, I was just, because of that, there's extra like nervousness, but seeing the reaction, seeing what Destin and Kevin and what we've all created on screen and seeing the reception, like, and being at that premiere was electric, like so you remember that. And it was like, wow. So I've been to so many of the premieres, but this one was a little different. And then just seeing the reception of people coming out and, you yourself, I asked you like, what'd you think? And you told me like eventually on text, a couple of days later, it just, you could a big sigh of relief and just, yeah, it's really exciting. It's really exciting time. Anytime we get to introduce a new Marvel character, it's always exciting, but this one definitely, personally has deeper meaning and just definitely more special than some others.
Well, I remember, I was like, you were kind of still really in it. And I was just like, you should be really proud of this, right? I was like, man, this is something to be so proud of because it was so good. And you're like, I think you're kind of like in a moment, you're like, oh, I haven't really, stepped back from it yet, right? Because you're still kind of like, we had just seen the premiere and we still didn't know how the public would receive it. We both came out like, oh my God, this movie is amazing. And it represented Eastern Asian culture, represented Asian American culture well, from the kind of Chinese Asian perspective. And so, I was just like, damn, you guys should be really proud. Like you guys did it. I was so proud of you and like the whole team for just being able to do something amazing like this. Cause to your point, people do not understand how hard it is to even make a movie that people like.
Yeah. Not
even like a good high tier movie, just a product, a piece of media that people like and enjoy and say, hey, you got to watch this. That's it's actually not that easy, right? So many things
Oh,
can go
not
wrong.
at all. Yep.
So
Yep.
I just want to give you your flowers and say, like, that was amazing. And, I know that Shang-Chi is a Chinese hero, and maybe we'll see a Korean one sometime soon in the future.
One day,
For people that
hopefully.
read the castings and watch Itaewon Class. Okay, I'm gonna stop there. I'm just gonna.
What are you talking about?
He's like, I have no idea. As these concepts, like, oh, I can't wait. I gotta do
I do have a lot of that. Like as I'm working, I'm just like, whether they tell me something or I'm working on it, I'm like, oh, I wish I can tell people that this is coming up. There's a lot of exciting stuff. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, we're bros, but it's like, I don't want you to tell me either, right? It's like, it's hard to hold it in. You can only really share it with your team, right? Because it's such a small group that you don't want it to get out, honestly, right?
Yep.
And other than people using long telephoto lens to shoot, the shooting locations, it's still, I think over time we've seen whatever sneak photos they get doesn't really spoil it, because dang, once the movie's there, the visual effects are in there and all that stuff is tightened up, it looks completely different.
Yeah. Exciting times.
Man, I know if you could explode right now and just throw up everything, you would, but
I know.
Like, exciting times, whole clench fist.
I know. Nope.
So
I will
Andy,
not do that.
Thank you so much for your time. Can you tell people maybe where they can follow you on social media, on the internet, just so they can kind of track, if you want the what he's doing but without spoilers, then just follow.
Yeah. You could. I'm on social media. I'm on everything from Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. It's all the same, at Andy Park Art. That's simple.
This was fun, man. It's always fun. Really appreciate, your insight. And I actually learned things from you today. I learned that the Great Protector scales are the same color as Shang-Chi and Jinling's.
Yep. It's all in the details.
All right, Andy. Thanks so much, bro.
Thanks, Brian. Take care.
You too.